Caso internacional. ¿Cómo lo hacen en otros destinos? Participan Miguel Sanz, director general de Turespaña, y Fred Dixon, presidente de Brand USA.
Brought my own water.
Okay, I'll start in Spanish.
Yeah.
Muy buenos días a todos y a todas de nuevo. Es la verdad que un placer para mí dar la bienvenida a Fred Dixon, que es el presidente y CEO de Brand USA. Brand USA es el Turespaña de Estados Unidos. Estados Unidos, a su vez, es pues, el mayor emisor turístico del mundo y el primer país del mundo en ingresos turísticos. Fred y yo, I'm going to tell our story.
Yeah.
Fred y yo compartimos una historia. Él trabajaba como número 2 en Turismo de Nueva York y yo trabajaba, era el director de marketing del Turismo de Madrid. Luego él fue CEO de Turismo de Nueva York y yo fui CEO de Turismo de Madrid. Luego a mí me nombraron director general de Turespaña y ahora él hace 1 año y medio, 2 años, le han nombrado CEO de Turismo de Estados Unidos. Así que nos conocemos desde hace muchos años y creo que esta charla pues, pone de manifiesto la relación entre dos colosos turísticos que son Estados Unidos y España, pero también entre Estados Unidos y Europa. This conversation is going to be in English, and you will have subtitles somewhere on the screen, probably here. And you will also have subtitles in the app, in the Convention app. Yes? So easy to follow. Although everyone here, I'm sure, speaks English and understands English really well. Fred, welcome. Welcome to Cáceres. Welcome to Spain. Thank you for being here.
Pleasure.
Out of everywhere in Spain, I bring you to one of the most beautiful cities in our country and in Europe. And I know you have enjoyed a visit yesterday and that you're doing what many people do. You flew from the States to Madrid, made a stop in Cáceres, and you're going to Lisbon tomorrow.
Yes.
So this afternoon. So welcome. And Brand USA, I was telling the audience that it's a private-public partnership. So you have a public part with the Secretary of Commerce, and then you have stakeholders in the private sector and in your board. I wanted to also ask you that we're in this together in one sense. We're competitors. I wouldn't say we're competitors. We have our markets, but for us, and we've discussed this quite a few times, it's really important for our industry to keep the interest of the global consumer. So we have seen in Europe that European citizens prioritize travel and tourism above other expenditure, like cars or home appliances or things like that. That is the case, I think, also in the United States.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you think is going to hold in the US? Is travel and tourism still, and do you think it will keep that way, a priority for the US consumer?
Yeah, I think so. Well, good morning, everyone. It's terrific to be here, and thank you, Miguel, for the invitation and the opportunity to see this beautiful part of Spain. I'm a big fan of your country, a big fan of Miguel's and his leadership, and thank you for your leadership, not only here in Spain, but across Europe and around the globe. It's terrific that we have been able to parallel each other through our lives, and this is really, I think, an important example of partnership. What began in Madrid almost 20 years ago, we're still partnering today. So relationships in this industry are everything. But what you said, I think, is very true. I mean, we're seeing it in the United States. People are prioritizing travel more and more every year. Leisure travel, has continued to grow post-pandemic at an incredible rate in the United States. We're seeing some softness this year. I think some of that is due to economic uncertainty. But overall, travelers in the United States are prioritizing travel expenditures over other expenditures, household expenditures, buying new appliances, buying a new car. I know my youngest, I monitor a lot of trends by my nieces and nephews, right? We do this with our family. And my nieces and nephews, all they want to do is travel. My mom calls it go-itis. I think this is a really fun word. She's like, you have go-itis. They don't want to be home. They're always traveling. And in fact, my youngest niece, who just got married, her dream was to come to Spain. So she came to Spain on her honeymoon. She also went to Italy. She had a terrific time. So while I think we're seeing a little softness this year in some of the uncertainty, the overall trend is forward and upwards. And I think the same is true for business travel as well. So I think it bodes well for both Spain and the United States.
Thank you. And it is true that partnerships matter. Fred and I, we signed the first ever agreement between two cities, Madrid and New York. And what we did, we didn't have that much money.
Yeah.
So what we did is say, okay, you have outdoor media, out-of-home, bus shelters and things like that, and banners over lamps. And we have it too. So you give me some of yours, I'll give you some of mine, and we'll have a beautiful campaign. And we did that 15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
And it was the first ever for us. It was the first ever for you.
And it was a model we were able to use in other countries around the world. And I hope that others, and I know they've used it as an example. So we started something good.
So we received last year almost 4.5 million US visitors in Spain. Americans are one of the biggest visitors to Europe in general. I think it was 25 million Americans that came over to Europe last year. We Europeans, we also visit the United States last year. 13 million Europeans went to the US. Almost 1 million Spaniards went to the US. But when we talk about, because we know our numbers and our fundamentals here in Spain, but what are the fundamentals in the US? What are the numbers, that hard data that you know by heart and that define your country as a tourist destination?
Yeah, and guides our strategy, right? I mean, this is everything, the data. Post-pandemic, I think, American outbound travel has been remarkable. And I think that is what you are identifying. I think that's what I'm happy to be here to talk about. Europe represents, though, in the reverse to the United States, the lion's share of our international market. More than half of the international travelers to the U.S. from around the world come from Europe. And we see this play out in the transatlantic air service, for example. One of the things that I've been talking to the current administration about is obviously we always enjoyed in the United States a trade imbalance to our favor. So more international travelers spent money in the U.S. than Americans spent abroad. Since the pandemic, it's been the reverse, right? So more Americans are traveling outbound today than they ever have in history. So we actually have a trade deficit with Europe at the moment and Spain in terms of spending, because our travelers are spending more abroad than your travelers are spending in the United States. So that's one of my goals, is to try to obviously to reverse that. Spending is everything, obviously at the moment, expenditures, and I know that's how you measure as well. And for us, we've enjoyed remarkable success here in Spain, and I see nothing but opportunity going forward. I mean, you just look at the airlift alone, the new airlift that we have between our countries. We're at record levels of seat capacity between the United States and Spain. And I know we'll talk more about this, but great connectivity to secondary destinations. So it isn't just about Madrid and Barcelona anymore. It isn't about New York and Atlanta and Miami anymore, right? It's about secondary destinations as well. And so far this year, we're up about, through July, we're up about 2% on Spanish visitation to the United States over last year. So we are nearing sort of record level visitation from Spain. And so that is something that I want to continue to grow. But the expenditures are at all-time highs in terms of spending. So we're up about 2% in visitation from Spain. We're also up about 2% in total spending in the U.S.
Great. And this leadership that we share, the U.S. and Spain, comes, I think, with responsibility. And our countries differ in scale. The United States is a super big country. Spain is somehow smaller. But I think that the challenges that we face, and we've talked about this before, are somehow very similar, or we share many of these challenges. Driving people away from popular tourist destinations or entry gateways. Also managing AI, staying competitive. There is a lot of competition out there. What are your biggest challenges for international tourism, both from a marketing perspective, from a marketing lens, like markets to target, seasonal balance, messaging, but also from an operational lens, coordinating with your states, local destinations, private partners, tech infrastructure? How do you manage that?
Yeah, it is a little more complicated for us in the U.S. You mentioned earlier the structure for Brand USA. It is public and private. So every year we have the opportunity to pull down $100 million U.S. from federal funds that are paid by travelers' ESTA fees visiting the United States. They go into a funded treasury, and we can unlock that fund. But we first have to raise $100 million in private dollars. So 100 million from the private sector, 100 unlocks 100 million from the federal government. And so it is really, for us, it is integral to be able to raise these dollars from cities, states, regions, corporate partners. And so integration, collaboration, partnership is everything in terms of our messaging and the way that we work. And I think that is a really nice model, actually, for us in the United States. You know, I think similar to you, we've had a few destinations, and I represent in New York, you represent in Madrid. You know, the lion's share of visitation comes to these markets, right? And these are the destinations that travelers know the best, right, in many ways. And so our goal is to drive travel beyond those. But New York, in many ways, is a city break for Europeans, right? Because of the volume of transatlantic air service, it is easy to come to New York for a long holiday. For Spaniards going to Texas, California, Wyoming, Montana, a much longer holiday, right? So competing on a city break level versus on a long haul, longer stay holiday are two different market perspectives. And this is something that I am really focused on. So the city break business is good. I think that will continue to be good. It's driven by access and value and availability. But driving longer staying, higher spending travelers to explore more of the country is really the goal. And so I think the business is more complex today because of the rapid digitalization that we're experiencing. AI in particular is rapidly changing how we approach the work. I know it's impacting you as well. The way travelers are sourcing information, the way we're reaching travelers in authentic ways is changing faster than I think it ever has. And we're on the cusp, I think, of a real movement that is going to cause all of us to really think ahead. It's going to challenge the way we think about marketing and content in particular. Our DMO website is going to be relevant in the future. I mean, this is a big question that we're asking ourselves in the United States. Content is king. Content will always be king. And so driving that inspiration, making sure that travelers see the content that we want them to see, and we're inspiring them, that the trade know that we are driving travel to the destinations beyond the gateways is more critical than ever before. So the challenges are very similar, and I think the more we can both succeed. At the end of the day, we have to keep the flights full, right? Without the air service, we have no business. So we have a shared interest in keeping the transatlantic business strong, and that's where I think our partnership is key. But competing with the rest of the world in terms of longer staying, higher spending travelers is more paramount than ever.
And I think that this is a very good point that you raise about artificial intelligence is we are seeing a decline in the page views of our site.
Same.
And this is something that has to do not because of lack of interest of the global consumer on Spain. It has to do with where this information is sourced from. And the strategy to keep content flowing to the consumer is key. Many people think that, I think wrongly, that an AI strategy is about having an assistant, an AI assistant. That is a small part or a part of it.
Yes.
The important part is where the big assistants are going to find the information about your destination. And if you can be a source of that answer given to the consumer at the other end of the platform, and how to store it, how to work with that content, textual content. So it's more important than ever to have textual content on your destinations. And this is something that we will discuss, and we've been discussing over the last few years, and we will keep discussing and developing strategies for our organizations.
Yeah, and I think we should share those strategies.
Yes.
I'm happy to do that. For us, we're focusing on Model Context Protocol, MCP, which is, I think, going to be driving a lot of the strategies, certainly in the short term. And you talked about scale, right? So many of our destinations are smaller, have less resources than others. And so for me, one of my goals is to how do we democratize, how do we level up destinations to compete globally? Because I want all of our partners to be able to compete on a level playing field with Europe and the other destinations around the globe. And so we're looking at building, what would it take to build a model context protocol for travel in the United States to become the ultimate resource? So instead of putting money into websites, which we are building a new website and we have a chatbot.
So are we.
Right, we're still doing these things. We have to think 5 steps ahead, and model context protocol seems to be the direction that we're all heading. So you're right, authenticity of content, validation of content, and strength of searchability with the agents is going to be key. And so this is something I think we're going to be talking a lot more about.
And this brings me to my following question. Spain and the US, you're a federal country. We have a semi-federal system. So part of our jobs is how to engage with, besides the budget, but how to engage with our stakeholders, states, DMOs, which is not always easy. It's been very easy with Extremadura. And
This is a very easy question, I can tell.
But it's not always easy because like in Spain, you have very different destinations. You have Florida and you have Montana, and we have Extremadura or La Rioja, and we have the Balearic Islands and the Canary Islands. So how do you do that? How do you engage with tips on how to engage with your stakeholders?
I mean, the interesting thing about the United States is because we're so large, to your point, and we span so many time zones, right? So the needs of Hawaii, are very different than the needs of Florida. And they actually don't really compete. You think they would, right? They're both beach, sun destinations, but very different dynamics, very different markets. We also represent, you mentioned it, the territories, so American Samoa, Guam, the Northern Marianas, the Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico. They all have very different markets. So making sure that we're being sensitive to the needs of the region. Hawaii in particular has had a real challenge. The Chinese market has not come back as strong as it traditionally did. The Japanese market, which was the core of their business, is very different today than it was 5 years ago. And so making sure that the West Coast and the East Coast are both, healthy is a real challenge because they face different parts of the world, right? So, I'm very comfortable on the East Coast. That's my background. The West Coast, we have other resources and other talent to help drive. But integrating with our partners is important, and they all have to see themselves in our work, right? I know you face this as well. It is critical that we bring as much attention to small partners as we do to the large ones as well. And at the end of the day, our goal, and I think you probably share this as well, is to get travelers to stay longer and to spend more. So you have to lift the smaller destinations in a way that puts them on the same level playing field. And so we have real success where we can scale those opportunities. And we have regions in the United States that work collaboratively together. Travel South, USA, is one in particular, which is the 11 southern states. And they pool their marketing resources together to compete with the other regions. We have this in the Rocky Mountains as well. We have this on the West Coast. Discover New England does it for the New England states. So
that's a good idea for our regions here.
Yeah, it's a nice model because individually we have small budgets, but together we have bigger scale. And so Travel South, for example, the 11 southern states have their own representatives that work in the market representing them. They have quite a substantial budget that comes from the states and the cities. And they're quite a powerhouse in the U.S. in terms of driving traffic and awareness. And so working with all of these partners is key. We have a whole partnership team that their whole goal is to create the investment opportunities for our partners, which ultimately is driving our match, right? So our budget comes from this engagement. But it also is the way in for destinations and corporate partners into the work of Brand USA. So it is complicated. I've been on the job 1 year in this new role. And I think it's going to take maybe longer than 1 year to actually learn it all, because it is quite a complex environment to operate in, but it's a real challenge. It's exciting.
Yeah. Now I feel kind of relieved that well, we have the Atlantic and Mediterranean, but a bit more manageable. Now, your job is to bring international visitors to the U.S., but you have, a unique position to also know about the American traveler.
Yeah.
And many in this room, destinations and private companies, work with the American market. So, can you tell us, what are the latest outbound travel trends in the U.S., and how can destinations, DMOs, and brands better engage with American travelers?
Yeah, I think the trends that we're seeing, probably similar to what you're seeing here in the U.S. Experiences are driving so much of the decision making. Live entertainment, in particular, concerts, right? Special events, unique experiences are driving it. I'm from a small town in Tennessee, in the Great Smoky Mountains. You should all visit the Great Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. It's a beautiful part of America. And one of the phenomenons that's been driving travel lately is, I don't know how you say it in Spanish, but we have lightning bugs. You know lightning bugs?
Yeah.
How do you say it in Spanish?
Luciérnagas.
Right? So with the forests where I'm from, one particular part is a very, very popular breeding ground for fireflies. And there are certain dates in the summer that you can go, and the forest is just lit up with these lightning bugs. It is the most amazing experience you've ever seen. Well, guess what? The demand is through the roof. Everyone wants to go to see the lightning bugs, the fireflies, as we call them. And so these kinds of unique experiences are driving travel. I think you have a solar eclipse that's coming, right? Next year. And in the U.S., I was skeptical. I thought, okay, we've seen eclipses before. It drove so much travel to the region where the eclipse happened, particularly in upstate New York, and I need to connect you with these people, that it was just incredible. Everyone is looking for these unique moments to travel. So I think you take that combined with somewhat new freedom with work, right, and work schedules. We're seeing the workcations, right, traveling for leisure, but also working while you're away, bringing the family with you and staying longer. Slow travel, was something we talked a lot about after the pandemic, but now I think it is really sticking. It's really here to stay. Longer, slower, immersive holidays, which I think is great for a market like Spain, because you offer so many terrific, unique experiences to go deeper into the destination. I mean, this city and this town and its heritage sites are a great example of that. And so I think the patterns and the trends in the U.S. are, I think, very attractive for Spain. And I think you're going to be well matched for how the travelers are thinking about, obviously their future plans. Digital nomads as well are I thought that was going to be a fad as well, but it is here to stay. But these longer, slower, immersive travel experiences, I think, are interesting. Don't forget, in the U.S., the baby boomers, right, the generation just ahead of Miguel and I, our parents, thankfully we're not there yet, are still spending. They're the wealthiest sector of travel in the United States. Obviously, older travelers that are empty nesters, their kids are gone to college, are the ones that are fueling travel, particularly to Europe, particularly off-season. So for shoulder seasons, this time of year in the winter, they're a key demographic, and they have a lot of money to spend. They're traveling much older into life, and so they're going to be a key market for you. But it's interesting to see how the young generations are traveling and what they're doing. They're really disrupting the game in many ways. And so for them, it is a lot more about affordability, right? Because it's interesting, right? Because you have the older travelers with money that are willing to go and stay longer and go deeper. The younger travelers want to travel even more, but they have less money, right? So they're spending it more thinly, and they're looking for affordability. They're looking for value. So for the younger travelers, staying closer to home, going to concerts, in nearby cities, going on cruises in the Caribbean is very popular. And so they're not quite there yet in terms of their longer haul travel opportunities. My generation certainly is. I think we are very European focused and European leaning. And so I think, people in their 40s, their 50s, their 60s are prime prime demographics for you. So I think the future is bright for both of us in that regards. These young ones, we have to figure them out as we go forward. But as you've got a great concert, you've got a great experience, they will definitely come.
And do you think, because we're trying to increase visitation in lesser-known destinations in Spain, and American travelers are sometimes very cautious, and they have safety at the top of their minds. Spain is a very, very safe country. Do you think that, is there an appetite for these lesser-known destinations beyond the big gateways like Madrid, Barcelona, or Seville, or the islands, for places like Extremadura or inland Spain? Is there an appetite?
I think so, absolutely. I think it's driven by curiosity. I think it's driven by social media. I think, I was thrilled that you have a lot of filming. Set jetting is a real trend these days, and I was thrilled to see some of the scenes here in Casetas that I recognize from the movies. And so I think these trends are going to continue, and yes, I think Americans will travel. It's about familiarity, right? So as long as they feel comfortable, and if they're in the hands of a good tour operator or travel advisor, they will absolutely go. I mean, security and safety is always going to be key for everyone. But you're such a safe country. I've always felt very comfortable here. I certainly spread that word for you as well everywhere I go. But yes, I think the opportunity is rich for travelers to go beyond the gateways.
Great, and just the other way around, we talked last night, and we were saying before about the great opportunities that the new secondary airports bring in this new connectivity, and Iberia just launched a direct route to Orlando from Madrid, which is not a main gateway, but it's an important destination within the United States. Yes. What are your expectations from the European market and the Spanish market? What are your goals here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the future, I think, right? And this is where we were going before the pandemic, and I'm really happy to see this back in this place that are driving secondary destinations to secondary destinations. Direct service. We saw it very clearly in Las Vegas. Las Vegas had a strategy and a strong desire to attract direct service. They no longer wanted to be reliant upon San Francisco and Los Angeles. And so they put a real effort on airport development and route development, and they were very successful. And that fueled their international growth in particular, first with BA and British Airways, but expanded quickly to other countries. And that is a model that others in the U.S. are following. Now we're seeing, to your point, Orlando is coming on very strong with new direct service to many destinations. We're thrilled about the Iberia service, but I think, from the U.S. side, I think connecting to secondary destinations here. I know I was talking to your colleagues here from Mallorca and Palma, and from Malaga in particular. The new direct service is thrilling. I think there's so much opportunity there, and it's going to create, I think, opportunities for travelers to go even deeper into Spain. Same way, I'm hoping that it's going to do the same for the United States, right? So, because it saves you time, it also changes your mindset, how you're thinking about your destination. You're no longer basing it around Madrid or Barcelona. You're now basing it, I'm going to fly directly into Malaga, and I'm going to travel the Andalusia, I'm going to travel the region. And so these are huge opportunities, and I think it will shape the way we're thinking about the future of travel. And so I'm excited to see Iberia's expanded service. I think United has done a great job of expanding as well. Delta too. American now out of Philadelphia is driving new service deeper into Spain. So I think all the infrastructure is growing in the way that we want it to. And this is going to shape our strategies for sure.
Great. I think we ran out of time many minutes ago.
Yeah, it's flashing.
My team is killing me.
Yeah.
But Fred, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming all the way to Cáceres from Washington, D.C.
My pleasure.
I hope you had a great time here.
I did.
I hope you have a good time with our neighbors in Lisbon. It's a great city as well. And I hope I'm seeing you next week in New York.
I'll see you in New York next week. Okay. And thank you all for the hospitality. It's really been wonderful to be here, and I will be back.
Thank you.
Thank you.